The sons of God have returned. Error, error, error. The wicked want the world to continue. The righteous see the end coming. Change is coming, we can all feel it. It's the end of a cycle, the age of Aquarius 3D timeline breakdown, end times return of God, whatever you call it. Our entire generation is fixated on an event that seems to be outside of our imagination. In these perilous times, who is the God we should call out to?
Jesus is the Son of God, the light of the world, the risen Savior, who will come again, as it does every morning, the glory of God who defends against the works of darkness, as he is born again every morning, and can be seen coming in the clouds, up in heaven, with his crown of thorns, or sun rays. Now, of the many astronomical metaphors.
But Jesus is specifically, that's the name of the sun. Just like the moon is called Luna. It's funny how people have not been taught to name the sun. The sun. It's got a name. In Hebrew it's Michael or Emmanuel. In India it's Krishna, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. In Egypt it was Osiris, Set, Atum, Amun, Horus, Ra.
The war between light and darkness. God's Son, the light of the world, and of course the Son is the light of the world. And he is always constantly doing battle with the prince of darkness. And consequently the ancient people said that the sun does not belong to anyone. It's not owned by anyone on this earth. And everyone knew that. So who did it belong to? Well, it belonged to God who created it, obviously. So therefore it was God's Son, not ours. So God's Son was, of course, the light of the world. He was our
In the myths of the Greeks and in the Bible, these characters always turn up. The main characters are always the sun and the moon which goes around our earth.
The Son, our born, again, Savior, light of the world, not the primordial, eternal ether, hidden creator of the universe who holds no form and all simultaneously, but our Heavenly Father, the highest spirit over our planet, who shines down rays of love called light.
This is why Jesus in early occult art is always shown with his head on the cross, for Jesus is the Son of God, the light of the world.
If we could open up the sun, we'd see layers of dense hydrogen gas, hundreds of thousands of miles deep, and at its center, the core, the sun gives birth to light. Forged in one of the most violent reactions in the universe, nuclear fusion.
The specific nuclear reaction that powers the sun is fusion. Fusion of hydrogen into helium. You take two hydrogen atoms, you ram them together, and what's left over is a helium atom.
Look at helium, which has only one shell or energy level. We see that it is full because it contains 2 electrons. So helium is stable, and there is no naturally occurring compound containing helium. Hydrogen, which also has only 1 ring or shell, possesses only 1 electron in its shell, so it's chemically reactive. In atoms with more...
Take note of all that you see, aware of the fact that this is how it all came to be. Even you, your parents and theirs, friends and then some, are all the result of hydrogen to helium.
It's actually hard to get 2 atoms to fuse. 2 protons have the same charge, they're both positively charged, they want to repel each other.
Protons don't like to get close together. They have to come together with a huge amount of energy or velocity to get close enough to begin to fuse, and that's very, very rare.
To force protons together takes immense amounts of heat and pressure, generated by the invisible hand of gravity.
3 suns, by the way. Everything's a Trinity, right?
There are 3 sides to every story. His side, her side, and the truth. The entire dimension is set up upon the principle of 3. In fact, we are said to be in the 3rd dimension. Past, present, future. Father, mother, child, liquid, solid, gas. Followers of the Kabbalah are familiar with the three paths. The law of polarity shows right and left path, but the middle was the road.
How, you know, that as above so below aspect, where for a second I was wondering, like, I'm like, I wonder if like our planets is like a, you know, electron, you know what I'm saying, have an electrical type of charge or whatever, which I mean it does have
their nucleus and in the electron cloud that surrounds the nucleus. These subatomic particles include protons and neutrons, which are located in the nucleus, and electrons, which are located in the cloud or field that surrounds the nucleus.
What an atom is. And when you learn and know what an atom is, it is a trinity, a neutron, a proton, and an electron. You will find that that trinity transfers into every other field of human knowledge. In the Zoroastrians, they taught there are three suns. The one you see is the physical, and it makes the physical world. Then the one behind the sun, they say the sun behind the sun, is the soul of the sun. Yeah. Sol Invictus, it was called. The invincible sun, Sol Invictus. It's the soul of the universe. The spirit of the universe is the highest Godhead, the monad, the highest part of the Godhead in our cosmos.
So now that you know, the Son of God is literally the actual sun. Ancient people understood that the sun was their source of life. Matthew 11:27. All things have been delivered to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father. Nor does anyone know the Father except the Son, and the one to whom the Son wills to reveal him. So, who is this mysterious Father of the Son?
There. Our sun was thrown off from another sun, Sirius.
Sirius, the brightest star in the sky.
They go around each other clockwise. And it takes 24,000 years to do one circle. Okay? When we come close to each other like this, we're in the golden age. So it's a long time. It's about a good solid 10,000 years the golden age lasts. Then we start going to what's called the silver age because of the distance. Now there's more distance, you see. They're parting from each other and they're saying goodbye. Bronze age. Dark age. Simple as that. You can.
Important has to do with the ages. Throughout the scriptures there are numerous references to the age. In order to understand this, we need to be familiar with the phenomenon known as the precession of the equinoxes. The ancient Egyptians, along with cultures long before them, recognized that approximately every 2,150 years the sunrise on the morning of the spring equinox would occur at a different sign of the zodiac.
Twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. Well, today we're going to solve that mystery for you. It's the same star that's been on your Christmas tree the whole time. The brightest star in the sky. The red dog star, Sirius A and B. The so-called brown dwarf star is...
If we have a good look at our solar system and how it works, for instance, the moon goes around the Earth in turn is rotating and orbiting the sun. So it takes 365 days to go around the sun. Now our sun in turn is orbiting Sirius. Sirius being the brightest star in the sky and in the sector of Cancer, right near Gemini. It is in a binary with our star.
This is a map of the orbit of Sirius and our sun in the great year. The closer the Earth gets to Sirius, the more we are influenced by Sirius energy. In the beginning of Virgo, the first age, our sun and Sirius are at the closest points of the orbit with each other. This is said to be a distance of 1 light year away from each other. Our sun and Sirius then pass each other at their closest point, and then both stars starts to move away from each other and the opposite direction. By the beginning of the age of Leo, our Sun has fallen completely out of the path made by Sirius orbit. We are taught that Leo is the first age, and that there is no predecessor for Egypt because in the age of Virgo, those who were advanced enough left this planet before the fall. From the beginning of the age of Leo to the end of the age of Pisces, our Sun moves further and further away from Sirius. These are referred to as the dark ages of the Sirius cycle, or the 6 months of darkness of the great year. As of December 21st, 2012, our Sun and Sirius, which had already began on their paths towards each other, have now aligned, signifying the beginning of the age of Aquarius. As our Sun and Sirius and its suns continue to move closer and closer towards each other, as we progress to the next ages of Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpio, and Libra, the Earth will be ascending arm or moving closer and closer to Sirius and experiencing more and more consistently from all suns, until our Sun and Sirius finally orbit each other at the closest point, which brings us back to the beginning of the first age, or the age of Virgo.
Plato gave the sinking of Atlantis as 9,000 years before Solon's exile to Egypt. Solon lived 600 BC, so do the math. 600 BC would be 2,600 years ago. 9,000 years prior to that would be 11,600, which puts us pretty much right in the middle of the age of Leo. Now,
after the disappearance of the Mu continent, El Cantare's light descended onto the continent of Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean. Some of the Mu made their way to Atlantis and brought with them their science and technology. The civilization of Atlantis reached its peak when Thoth, the Great Master, descended to the continent around 12,000 years ago.
Thoth, the omniscient and omnipotent, had great knowledge in a number of fields, ranging from religion, politics, philosophy, science, and art. Under the guidance of Thoth, Atlantis developed a civilization based on advanced technology that even Mu could not rival.
Thoth then cast the light of wisdom upon his people, which accelerated the progress of civilization.
After which, the light made its way to Egypt, then to Greece, and then to Rome. It became the original source of Western civilization that blossomed later in history.
So the light of El Cantare, which reincarnated as Lamu and then again as Thoth, descended to the Andes to become the king of the ancient Incan kingdom.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Now that your eyes are open to the truth, the hidden secrets of the ages, you can consider yourself and initiate. Initiate to a mystery school where each degree gets stranger. Our star, the Sun, was born from Sirius the Father billions of years ago, and is being pulled by the Sirius star system through space as a parent system. This eternal loop is what creates the changing ages on Earth. The beginning of an age is marked by the destruction of previous ages. During the age of Leo, humans will reach peak consciousness and ascend as a group. Last time this happened, the Atlanteans left the planet. 2012 marked the crossing of the galactic plane. Sirius is now turned on its loop and headed back towards Earth, marking the reawakening of higher consciousness.
Here's one fact that proves that we're in a binary that Walter Crittenden presents, and that is the fact that Sirius, now a bright blue star, 2,000 years ago, was red. How do we resolve this matter? How do we understand what happened with Sirius 2,000 years ago? Well, it was exactly 2,000 years ago that Sirius turned blue, because when, let's say this is our Earth, okay, our Sun, and this is Sirius, and they're moving away from each other. Moving away is the Doppler effect called red-shifted. So those bodies that are red-shifted, are moving away from us. Blue is coming towards. So Sirius must have, 2,000 years ago when it changed colour, it must have turned that corner and then started, and now it's coming toward us as blue. Simple as that. It cannot be any other reason.
For an observer, if a star was moving towards them, the light waves produced by the star in front of the star would be compressed together, giving high-frequency light waves. High-frequency visible light is of a blue colour, so we call this blue shift. If a star is moving away from an observer, the light waves produced behind the star would be stretched out, and this would give low-frequency light waves, and low-frequency visible light is of a red colour. This can be seen with stars when we look out in the universe, that the stars have a red tinge or red shift as we call it, showing that all the stars are moving away from us. This indicates that the space between stars is getting bigger and therefore the universe is getting bigger.
Now that we know the Father and the Son, we must meet the Mother, the Holy Spirit, the dark matter, the ether, the zero-point blackness, zero space, the Higgs boson.
In the year 1964, Peter Higgs, Francois Englert, and 4 other scientists proposed a rather unique idea to explain why certain particles had mass. They hypothesized that the entire universe is filled with an invisible, all-permeating field that gives mass to all elementary particles. The field in question is called the Higgs field. A wave, ripple, or disturbance in that field is therefore called the Higgs boson, or the Higgs particle.
The Higgs boson. You may have heard of it, but what is it? And what would the world be like if there were no Higgs boson? Well, then there'd be no world. Its particles wouldn't be able to stick together, and they'd just float around aimlessly forever. And where would that leave you? Nowhere. That's where. You wouldn't exist. It is a field of energy that exists throughout all of space, and it is composed of Higgs bosons, which are elementary particles. All subatomic particles pass through and interact with the Higgs field. Some of these particles, like photons, whiz through and barely interact with it, resulting in very small mass. Other particles, like quarks, drag through and interact with the field a lot, which results in a larger mass. With this, the Higgs boson is able to successfully fill in the hole in the standard model.
So the Higgs is the unseen which our world is held. Genesis 1, verse 2. And the earth was without form, and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. The darkness was the great mother that the light of God spread its rays on, to create the third dimension.
Now, the idea that everything is connected is a very old idea. Even in science, in the late 1800s, there was a belief that there was an invisible web of energy that connects everything in the 1800s. And scientists were in a very heated debate, very controversial.
Can you see God in every grain of sand? Mahaprabhu Vallabhacharya was an astonishing saint who saw God everywhere and guided his followers to do the same. He established his philosophy of Brahmavad, meaning everything is Krishna. According to it, Sri Krishna is the source of all creation. Both the Jeev and Maya are his undifferentiated energies. Thus, everything that exists is a manifestation of Sri Krishna.
We learned God is in everything, and everything is in God. The Divine Mother, The triple blackness of space is defined as infinite potential. The light of the world is projected. If the light of the sun is the projector, the ether would be the screen.
Light can be broken up into different types, and we call the whole family the electromagnetic spectrum. So even when it's dark, light is still all around us. Light can be created by making an electron oscillate. This creates an oscillating magnetic field and an oscillating electric field, which we call an electromagnetic wave or light. We often represent light as a wave. Just like water waves, light has a wavelength, a frequency, and a speed. The different colours of optical light have different wavelengths, and so does the rest of the electromagnetic spectrum.
The third dimension is all light that vibrates against the ether, aka the electromagnetic field of Earth. Within the gamma and radio wave frequency, the ether is the highest concept of God. The triple blackness, the unknowable, the reality on which all dimensions are painted. The third dimension is just a small portion of the Eternal Mother.
Evidence shows that worship to a feminine deity dates back thousands of years to early civilizations all around the globe. Though these settlements had no communication with one another, they all worshipped a feminine deity. The feminine deity was known by many names, including Goddess or Divine Mother, and her force ruled from both within and outside of all things. These cultures recognized her force archetypally as a great mother due to its ability to perpetuate existence and instill the traits of compassion, harmony, love, and sharing.
If this exists, as we seem to be getting closer to understanding it does, what would that do? What would that mean?
It may mean we'd be able to unlock limitless energy. Let me just put it that way. It may be that we would understand the next secret of the universe, that we would know, we'd be another step closer to knowing where we came from. We'd be another step closer to understanding the universe itself, which is ultimately quite a mystery to us.
What is this Higgs boson God particle?
At the very, very beginning of the universe. See, people here, as a matter of fact, I'm in Los Angeles. People at Mount Wilson, not far from here, notably Edwin Hubble, noticed that all the stars, everything's moving apart. So he reasoned that everything was all together at one time, and this would be the Big Bang. Well, at that time, it is speculated by mathematical, elegant physical reasoning that everything was kind of one thing. But then after the Big Bang, things started to separate. Things started to take on different properties. So that pure energy, like light, has no mass. The particles of light have no mass. The particles that make up you and me, like you've probably heard of protons and neutrons and electrons, they have mass. And do you know why?
No.
No one really is sure why. But it could very well be that there's an exchange of particles. Nowadays, we view these things as particles. We do experiments to detect particles, and you detect particles. Protons are made of quarks, which are held together with gluons. No kidding. And so it could be, it's very reasonable that these other particles all exist in this ether that would be called, named after Peter Higgs.
Right.
That is then infused with little particles that give them mass, that help them have mass.
So let's...
that we perceive out there in the universe is a small fraction of the matter that exists. We see and feel the atoms, the electrons and the quarks via the protons and the neutrons. These particles dominate our experience of the universe because they are strongly interacting. They tug and push at each other via the electromagnetic and the strong nuclear forces. But there are other matter particles that interact only weakly, and so we don't see them even though they're insanely abundant. Roughly 100 trillion neutrinos emitted by the sun pass through your body every second, but you don't notice them because they rarely interact with the electrons and the quarks that make up the atoms that make up you. And then there's dark matter.
Congratulations, you have seen the truth of the Trinity. The three-headed God, electricity, magnetism, and light are the three forces that create the third dimension: the Son, the Father, and the Mother. Now that you got the basics, it's time to talk about free energy and the reptilian mind matrix of the Moon.
Large Hadron Collider, or LHC. The fact that they're charged is the key to making this work. Two positively charged particles will repel each other, same with two negatively charged ones. That's the key to letting us use electromagnetic fields to push these protons around. Let's take a look at how the LHC does this. The LHC isn't an entirely new machine. Instead, it's built out of the bones of every previous particle accelerator built by its operators at CERN. Over the years, CERN has built several of what were the biggest particle accelerators of their time. Now, those earlier accelerators help speed up the protons and put them on the way into the LHC. Protons start off by traveling down a linear tube where electromagnetic fields give them a constant push forward. From there, they enter into a series of loops, with each loop giving a bit more speed to them before they're injected into the 26-kilometer long ring of the LHC. The 26-kilometer long tube is packed with magnets. Some of these magnets help keep the protons moving straight as they head down the tube. Others help impart a bit of a curve so that they go around the circular path of the LHC. The tube.
When did the Large Hadron Collider go live?
2007, I think it was, or 2008. It's so long ago.
How large is it? How large is
it's?
The
It's 27 kilometers, so what's that, about 16 miles? Well, it's a big tube, and it accelerates protons around in a circle, both ways. One beam goes one way, one goes the other way, and they go around 11,000 times a second, very close to the speed of light, 99.999999% the speed of light. And then we cross the beams and collide the particles, and in those collisions, you're recreating the conditions that were present less than a billionth of a second after the Big Bang. So we know that physics.
When the two colliding protons get very close and overlap, an energetic gluon is emitted from each of the protons. The two high-energy gluons merge in a dramatic event. In the very energetic gluon fusion, several things can happen. Sometimes, the fusion of the two gluons can result in the production of the Higgs particle. The Higgs particle can decay in many ways, among others, into two photons. The advantage with this decay is that as photons approach each other, the protons have been accelerated to very high energy, practically the speed of light.
When the particles collide inside the particle accelerator for a brief moment, a miniature universe is created. A mirror projection of our universe. In a lower frequency, basically a dirty mirror. We know at the peak of the Golden Age, man goes to heaven as a group, aka space exploration. Now we learn that at the lowest of the Bronze Age, man goes to hell. A lower version of our reality in which the reptilian will be relocated. Scientists claim they are using nuclear fusion, the process of combining atoms, for energy. But God gave us free energy. So what are they really up to?
Reduces your electromagnetic field. Now all pyramids were connected to each other as a part of a giant magnetic grid. Now these pyramids are missing their capstones. If those capstones were found, we would have a functioning electric grid. But instead we have 5G towers being erected all over the world, which are detrimental to biological life forms everywhere. And they must be 1,000 feet away from each other, which is very near compared to the pyramids around the world being connected across continents. Free energy is real and it's being suppressed. And that
the Great Pyramid is situated within a whisker of latitude 30. It seems like the latitude choice was derived from astronomy because there's a lens effect of the atmosphere of the Earth, and when you take that into account, the tiny error shy of latitude 30 goes away. They were on astronomical latitude 30, if you like. Seems like a very deliberate choice because it's not a random latitude. It's 1/3 of the way between the equator and the North Pole. This is just one of the many ways, I feel, in which the Great Pyramid deliberately and purposively speaks to our planet. The next way it does that is that it is aligned. But if you take upon yourself the project of building a pyramid and aligning it to true north, south, east, and west, you wouldn't make any error at all. There is an error in the Great Pyramid. It's tiny. It's 3/60ths of a single degree off true north. This is almost eerie precision. because the scale of the monument is so huge. This thing is 481 feet high. It has a footprint of slightly more than 13 acres. It weighs 6 million tons. It consists of 2.5 million individual blocks of stone. You're taking that whole gigantic mountain of stone and you are aligning it within just 3/60ths of a single degree of true north. We're not talking about magnetic north, which varies. We're talking about astronomical north, the true north of this planet. It's a very remarkable thing, and that's the north of this planet. Once again, the Great Pyramid is speaking to the Earth.
Could the pyramid be revealing something else?
On a scale of 1 to 43,200, the dimensions of the pyramid give you the dimensions of this planet. In other words, if you measure the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth. And if you measure the height of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the Earth. So in all those centuries and millennia, when our ancestors went through the Dark Ages and didn't even know that they were living on a planet, let alone the dimensions of the planet, all they ever had to do was go accurately measure the Great Pyramid, multiply those numbers by 43,200, and they have the dimensions of our planet.
Could this be the
pyramid? There's King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber. There's a beautiful big King's passageway there, and then it shoots off there to the Queen's Chamber, and then it comes down here, and there's the entrance there. There's some underground stuff going on down here, right? This is the one without the top. The all-seeing eye is supposed to sit in there. By the way, that represents ether, and this is fire, earth, air, and water. Okay, ether, fire, earth, air, and water. That's what the pyramid's telling you. That's the ether. It's uncapped for a reason. Yeah, well, it has too, yes, but when it's placed back on there, you will see this thing is going to come back to life very, very soon. Even the Bible talks about it. In Isaiah, it says, there will be a monument built by the Lord in the heart of Egypt, on the border of Egypt, because it is on the border. Lower Egypt was everything from where the pyramid is. There's the Nile Delta, and there's the Mediterranean. The pyramid's right there. That was Lower Egypt. This is Upper Egypt, where Thebes is down here, and Luxor, and here is Cairo, and the pyramids on the Giza Plateau. That is in the middle of the land of the Lord. It will come back to life, and we will know what it was all about very soon.
Exterior was made of material that insulates electricity. The interior was made of material that conducts electricity. The chambers were made of material that creates electricity. The next piece of evidence is the pyramid's ability to focus EM energy. In 2018, scientists used radio waves at different frequencies to see if the Great Pyramid would interact with electromagnetic waves of a resonant length. Their experiments proved that in a resonant state, the pyramid can concentrate electromagnetic energy in the internal chambers as well as under its base. Resonance in the pyramid can be induced by radio waves with the lengths ranging from 200 to 600 meters. The closer to 200 meters, the more dramatic the effect. A year after that, in 2019, Eric Wilson published a paper called A Large-Scale Thermal Acoustic Generator. The paper describes how, when granite and other rocks are vibrated, electrons will migrate through the rock and up to the surface. By combining science and music, the builders of the pyramid created a power-generating machine tuned to the natural harmonic of the Earth's vibration that primarily comes from the tidal energy created by the moon's gravity. This technology, created thousands of years ago, could generate unlimited clean energy. But how did they get the energy out? That brings us back to Tesla. His Wardenclyffe Tower idea that the Great Pyramid was a power plant is not new. It was first proposed in the 1970s. It was, and is, considered a fringe theory. Limestone can carry an electrical current. Tour limestone can't. Interior chambers were built with a rare type of granite called rose granite, also brought from hundreds of miles away. This granite has a high concentration of silicon dioxide, also known as quartz. When quartz is compressed or even just moved, it creates a charge called piezoelectricity. One face of the quartz will have a positive charge, the other will have a negative charge. Connect the two faces together and you have an electrical circuit. Because of this property, Quartz is used in all kinds of modern devices like watches, clocks, TVs, GPS units, and on and on. To charge a watch that uses quartz, all you have to do is shake it. And if you've ever used a barbecue lighter, the voltage is created by a quartz crystal. The king and queen's chambers were built with granite that is 85% quartz. The tunnels and passageways are also lined with quartz-rich granite. If pressure was applied to all this granite, it would generate a tremendous amount of electricity, turning the pyramid into a giant power plant. And there's proof that this is exactly what happened. Science. One of the most compelling cases comes from Christopher Dunn. He believes the process starts in the subterranean chamber. Below the pyramid are aquifers. As water moves through the underground cavities, sound waves are created. The frequency of these waves resonate with the Earth's natural vibration. As those waves move up through the pyramid, a process is used to magnify, focus, and convert the sound into energy. The Queen's Chamber was used for a chemical reaction that created hydrogen, and there's substantial proof of this. There are two interior shafts that lead to the Queen's Chamber. The northern shaft has traces of hydrochloric acid. The southern has traces of hydrated zinc chloride. Combining these two chemicals creates a volatile reaction that generates hydrogen, a lot of hydrogen. This hydrogen gas would flow from the Queen's Chamber through the horizontal passage and into the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is also made of granite. As the hydrogen gas builds up, the pressure compresses the granite, creating electricity. This electricity also ionizes the air, increasing conductivity. Within the Grand Gallery were 27 or 28 pairs of resonators that would vibrate and emit sound. The hydrogen atoms would organize themselves into waves in sympathy with the sound waves of the gallery. These sound waves further excite the stone, creating even more electricity. Acoustic engineers have determined the gallery resonates at 440 Hz and naturally emits an F-sharp chord. 440 Hz and the F-sharp chord have been connected to a lot of woo-woo ideas, but there's a reason for that. It's considered a sound that resonates in harmony with the Earth. The builders of the pyramid knew this. Longtime Mac users will recognize this sacred chord. At the top of the gallery is a small shaft leading to the King's Chamber. The opening is 8.4 by 4.8 inches. This is the perfect size for hydrogen microwaves to pass into the King's Chamber, which also resonates at 440 Hz and F-sharp. Above the King's Chamber are 5 layers of granite beams, stacked and separated by air gaps. This is called the relieving chamber because it was believed that this interior structure relieved the weight of the pyramid. That's not what it does. The beams are smooth on 3 sides, but rough cut on the top. Christopher Dunn believes the reason for the rough cut is this is how the beams were tuned. The builders could vibrate the granite beams and slowly chip away at the stone until they resonated with an F-sharp chord, which they do. The King's Chamber is what's known as a Helmholtz resonator. When you blow air across the top of a bottle and create sound, that's a Helmholtz resonator. Change the volume of liquid in the bottle, or change the volume of stone within the chamber, you change the pitch. The entire complex is a giant musical instrument. Now, some skeptics reluctantly agree that the Great Pyramid has musical properties, but for skeptics to consider the pyramid as a power plant, they would need evidence to show that a giant stone pyramid would respond to electromagnetic energy. There was no evidence of that until 2018. It was built on top of an aquifer, with copper and iron rods extending down into the water. When electricity was sent into the tower, it was to be transmitted around the world through the atmosphere. The pyramid is also built on an aquifer, and copper pipes and iron rods have recently been discovered there. If the capstone was made of gold, the energy concentrated inside the pyramid would have been drawn to the top and transmitted to the atmosphere. Tesla's wireless power distribution system used the resonance of the Earth, just like the pyramid. And just like the pyramid, the energy generated by Tesla's tower would be unlimited, clean, and virtually free for everyone on the planet. But Tesla's tower was destroyed by outside forces. There's evidence that the Great Pyramid was destroyed from within.
Most epic work, the Tesla coil. 8 years before the opening of his laboratory, Tesla invented the Tesla coil in 1891. This invention could solicit much energy within an electric charge, measured in volts. One Tesla coil can have over 1 million volts of power at a time, with small ones usually having about 60,000 volts. The Tesla coil is unusual because unlike other devices with this voltage level, it is much safer due to the energy flowing outside one's body instead of inside. The exception comes from the coil turning on and off rapidly, creating high-frequency electricity. The Tesla coil would...
In order to understand how Nikola Tesla wanted to transmit power, first you have to understand that it's pretty easy to transmit power wirelessly. For example, all you need is a balloon and a piece of paper. So I'm going to charge this balloon up by rubbing it on my floor. So watch what happens when I bring the balloon near the paper. The paper goes towards it. So now let's say I wanted to generate some type of power by wiggling this paper back and forth. Well, then I just have to move my balloon by it back and forth. You can see that you can easily transmit power, meaning it took...
The U.S. power grid is a modern wonder, painstakingly built over a century by connecting a complex network of power plants and transformers using more than 450,000 miles of high-voltage transmission lines. The actual electricity comes from places like this. This is Niagara Falls and the location of the largest hydroelectric power plant on the East Coast.
The hum that we're hearing right now is literally the sound of power, 115,000 volts.
The technology that makes all this possible wouldn't exist without the rebel genius of Nikola Tesla.
It's just amazing from a history standpoint. Tesla helped create the foundation of our electrical grid.
Nikola Tesla's incredible career began in 1884 after he boarded a ship to the United States. The blow in the War of the Currents was delivered by Tesla when his AC power system made its international debut. It was Thomas Edison's worst nightmare.
Everybody assumed that Edison would get the contract to wire it and to power the first World's Fair powered by electricity. And to everyone's surprise, Westinghouse, using Tesla's patents, won the contract. And I think to really appreciate how important that moment was, you have to think back to what it was like at that time. The only way to light your home was with a candle or with a gas lamp. So you come to the World's Fair and flash, I mean, literally 100,000 light bulbs lit up. I mean, nothing like this had ever been seen before. It was truly transformational.
By the time Thomas Edison returned from the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, he was in a rage. He counterattacked Tesla's success by launching a brutal smear campaign, one of the nastiest in the history of American industry.
Edison had already lost, but he didn't accept it.
Edison published pamphlets that warned about the dangers of AC power. His associates electrocuted dogs and horses and even an elephant on the streets of New York to try to convince people that AC power was too dangerous and should not be used.
In addition to executing animals, Edison promoted the idea of an AC-powered electric chair to provoke fear about the dangers of Tesla's AC current. But the campaign of terror could not derail the brilliance of Tesla's work. Undeterred, and in possession of the superior technology, Westinghouse and Tesla set out to light America.
Studied this for a number of years. It seems to be related very much to do with the idea of the music of the spheres, the idea that there is some kind of connection between the primal tones of the universe itself and their relationship to the creation of form and structure in the physical world, and that to somehow attune and enhance this connection, that certain proportions have to be constructed into the design of the pyramid and also the geometry of the landscape itself. And these seem to reflect the musical intervals, in particular those which are known as the perfect fourth, which has a ratio of 4:3, and those known as the perfect fifth, has a ratio of 3:2, one of which is an inverse form of the other.
If nuclear power plants, don't they, the process is using that nuclear energy to create steam to operate turbines and...
Yeah, basically all of our electricity today comes from
essentially, most of the electricity is coming from turbines. So you heat water, the water makes steam, the steam turns the turbine, and the turning turbine generates the electricity. It's a matter of where do you get the energy to boil the water. That's what it comes down. Is it coal? Is it oil? Is it nukes? Is it wind? Is it hydro?
And a man-made energy crisis, ultimately designed over the decades by power-hungry governments, wealthy politicians, special interest groups, big oil, and greedy energy companies that are making record profits, billions off of our fossil fuel reliance, while the general public suffers the consequences of what decisions were made for them, self-serving decisions that were not in the best interest of the people. It didn't have to be this way, though. Things most certainly could have been done differently by embracing alternative energy sources 100 years ago. Now you may be thinking, wait a second, we're actually embracing alternative energy sources right now. We're working hard to implement solar technology, wind turbines, other non-fossil fuel energy alternatives, as well as a big push for electric car use. But it just takes time to get a solid system in place, right?
Subjective assessment that science can give today. And it starts here. We've reached 1.2 degrees Celsius of global mean surface temperature rise, the warmest temperature on Earth over the past 100,000 years. We have just scratched on 1.5 degrees Celsius as an annual mean in 2023. But what worries us most is this. We are starting to see an acceleration of warming over the past 50 years, 0.18 degrees Celsius per decade from 1970 to 2010. But then from 2014 onwards, it abruptly jumps up to 0.26 per decade. And if we follow this path, we will crash through 2 degrees Celsius within 20 years and hit 3 degrees Celsius by the year 2100, a disastrous outcome caused by us humans. But it's not only carbon dioxide. Any parameter that matters for human well-being and our economies look the same. Here you have it, linear change up until the 1950s. We go into the great acceleration, and this is what we're seeing across overconsumption of fresh water, the 6 max extinction of species, over-eutrophying our freshwater systems with nitrogen and phosphorus, all of it undermining the stability of the planet. As if this was not enough, we are seeing that this is now causing impacts across the entire economy.
Currently, we're supposed to be in an ice age, but it's warm outside because of fossil fuel emissions, turning the CO2 in the atmosphere into a basic hot pocket.
So this brings us full circle to the question, why is CERN? Colliding particles. Energy is free, and nuclear fusion pushes farther into global warming. Remember, there is a war in heaven. The devil and the reptilians desire your soul. They use the energy when 2 souls or particles collide. So you took the blue pill, and you have now left the matrix. You're entering into the real world, where there is an intergalactic war being fueled by evil energy.